Japan continues to make these mistakes. What was the original reaction to the earthquake? The Central Bank of Japan comes out, we will add liquidity. And they did. I mean, they printed the equivalent of hundreds of billions of dollars in yen and flooded the market with cheap money. The current view of a central bank is that whenever there's a problem, the central banks should print money and try to solve it. Well, how does creating inflation solve a problem? How does adding inflation to an economy? If anything, it creates bigger problems. You know, what Japan needs right now is the exact opposite of what the central bank is giving it. Japan now needs to divert tremendous amounts of resources to rebuilding infrastructure that was damaged by the quake. In addition, their nuclear power plants are offline. They need to import more oil and other forms of energy to make up for the lost output. So what has to happen? Well, people have to spend less and save more. And how do you do that? You raise interest rates. And in fact, when the economy is contracting, production is falling. Plants have been idle. There's less production. You need less money, not more money. If you remember, or if you don't remember, but I'll let you know, when the Federal Reserve was first created in 1913, one of its primary goals was to establish an elastic money supply. And an elastic money supply meant that when the economy expanded, money supply would expand. But then when the economy contracted, money supply would contract, because the people who created the Federal Reserve understood that that had to happen. You don't want to expand money supply when your economy is contracting, because all that does is make prices rise. It's inflation. It's not what you want. And so if the Japanese raised interest rates, what would happen? People would spend less and save more, and the savings would be made available to fund the new investment that needs to be made in repairing infrastructure. You know, a lot of phony economists, and you'll hear them on television talk about, natural disasters are good for the economy because of all the rebuilding. It's not good for the economy. They're bad for the economy because you have to expend resources rebuilding what you already had. And so those resources are not available to create more output, more goods and services. You're simply recreating what you lost. But that has to happen. So we need more savings in Japan. And to talk about, we've got to maintain these low interest rates. Why are they doing that? Japan intervened over the weekend to stop the yen from rising. Now, the yen is still rising against the dollar, but it's not rising as fast as it would if the Bank of Japan wasn't printing all this money to try to stop the yen from rising. But they want a strong yen. Remember, the reason they wanted a weak yen was to promote exports, which they shouldn't have done, but they don't need exports right now. They need imports. They need steel. They need concrete. They need energy. They need to rebuild. They want a stronger yen because that will bring down costs for them and make the cost of rebuilding less expensive. Instead, they're printing all this money, and it's going to drive up the costs, and it's preventing the economy from doing what needs to be done. In fact, if Japan continues on this route to prop up the dollar and maintain the undervalued yen, they're going to spend more money propping up our economy than rebuilding their own. I mean, think about it this way. Japan's got a giant rainy day fund of U.S. Treasuries. They've got about $900 billion of U.S. Treasuries. Well, it's pouring out. Why not tap into those treasuries? Because obviously the government of Japan is planning on spending a lot of money in the wake of this quake. But you know what they're trying to say now? That selling the treasuries is off the table. That what they're going to do, instead of tapping into that fund, is they're just going to borrow money and pay interest on it when they got a pile of treasuries that they're sitting on, collecting practically no interest. Why don't they sell them? It doesn't make any sense. Now, maybe, just maybe, the Japanese are going to come to their senses and realize, we can't rebuild our economy and prop up the U.S. economy at the same time. So we got to make a choice, right? The Japanese economy or the American economy. I think this time they might finally do it right after 20 years of getting it wrong. Now, maybe they won't. Maybe they'll just keep getting it wrong, and maybe the U.S. is going to catch a break here, and the Japanese will buy even more treasuries. But if they do the right thing, they're going to buy fewer treasuries.